Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are exploring a story that carries both the fragile hope of peace and the brutal reality of chaos, a tale set in a city that once promised unity but soon found itself drowning in fear. It all began when the leaders stood on a grand balcony, declaring that the era of conflict was over, that the people would live under a sky without the sound of gunfire, and that the streets would welcome laughter again. Yet, while the promise was made under the golden light of morning, the shadows it cast were long and dark. By nightfall, the same streets were marked with blood, and the promise of peace felt like a cruel illusion. From the outside, the city appeared majestic. Its skyline rose like a crown above the river, with tall glass buildings reflecting the sun's rays in brilliant patterns. The markets overflowed with colors, fabrics swaying in the wind, vendors calling out to customers, and children weaving through crowds with carefree joy. Old stone structures stood beside modern steel, telling the story of generations who had built this place brick by brick. But beneath this beauty, tension simmered. The wide streets and blooming gardens could not hide the restless eyes watching from doorways, the hurried footsteps of strangers avoiding confrontation, or the silent patrols of armed guards who claimed to protect but often provoked. Inside, the city's spaces told a different story. Homes were built with care, their interiors warm with wooden beams, patterned rugs, and the scent of bread baking in ovens. Families gathered around low tables to share meals, their voices low, often glancing toward windows as if expecting trouble to knock. The interiors of official buildings gleamed with marble floors and polished brass, but in the corners, whispers of secret deals and power struggles echoed louder than the public speeches. It was a place where beauty and fear lived side by side, each pretending the other didn't exist. When it came to the performance of the new leadership, the contrast was sharp. On paper, they delivered new housing projects, rebuilt schools, and improved roads. The public speeches painted a picture of steady progress, and foreign visitors were shown the most peaceful districts. But in the areas away from cameras, gang rivalries, political feuds, and quiet vendettas played out violently. Promises of disarmament were undercut by weapons hidden in basements. Peace talks were often just pauses between attacks, and the performance of unity was more about appearance than reality. For the people who walked these streets daily, it felt like living inside a theater. The set was beautiful, but behind the backdrop, everything was falling apart. Safety was a fragile illusion. Officially, the city boasted increased patrols, community watch programs, and surveillance systems to keep the streets secure. Yet these same measures often became tools of control rather than protection. Cameras watched citizens more closely than they watched criminals, and patrols sometimes protected only those who were loyal to the right people. Families adapted to their own safety routines, locking doors before sunset, walking only in familiar areas, and teaching children not to talk to strangers, even ones in uniform. The fear was not only of random violence but of being caught in the wrong place at the wrong time when someone else's feud erupted. The streets themselves seemed to know the pattern of quiet in the mornings, tense in the afternoons, and unpredictable at night. The city's unique selling points were a bittersweet mix. Its architecture was breathtaking, centuries-old towers beside futuristic structures, bridges arched gracefully over shimmering water, and parks bursting with flowers. The people's resilience was unmatched. They kept markets running, schools open, and traditions alive even in the face of danger. The culture was rich with music, festivals, and food that told the history of its diverse population. But the truest uniqueness came from its contradictions, a place where kindness could be found in the same alley as cruelty, where strangers would share bread with you one day and cross the street to avoid you the next. It was a city that taught you to appreciate beauty quickly, because you never knew how long it would last. The price of living here was not just measured in currency. While the cost of goods, housing, and daily necessities had risen sharply due to instability, the real cost was emotional and physical. People paid in constant vigilance, in the weight of unspoken fears, and in the silent calculations they made every time they stepped outside. For some, the price was exile, leaving behind homes and businesses to start over elsewhere. For others, it was the loss of loved ones to the violence that seemed to appear without warning. Those who stayed paid with patience, hoping that one day the promise of peace would finally be honored, and that the blood in the streets would dry for good. In conclusion, this was not just a story about a city, but about the human spirit caught between hope and despair. It was about leaders who promised peace but could not deliver it, about citizens who built lives in the cracks between safety and danger, and about a place where the beauty of a sunrise could be followed by the tragedy of a nightfall. The story reminds us that peace is not just a word to be declared, it is a promise that must be kept every day, in every street, for every person. Until then, the struggle between the light and the shadows will continue, and the city will remain what it has always been, a fragile dream, standing on streets that remember every drop of blood spilled upon them.